Now it's just me and Brandon. Wife's taking a shower. She has probably wait till she gets out of the shower. Nah.
Whoa! Gotta stop myself.
Damn it, Brandon. Why are you not shut like all of them?
I did. Show the that side. Because they're such a thick back.
Give me the damn cards! I can do it.
I'm leaving.
Wait, this is offline. I mean offline.
Oh yeah, it's on your carrot.
Yeah. You'll probably have to rinse one of them out. There's one in it. Just rinse it out. Hang on. I don't know if I'm actually live or not. Twitch is being a shit. Crap. It says I'm offline, but like down here at the bottom it says I'm offline, but I'm watching it on the computer, and I'm watching it here.
I don't really know a lot about that.
Oh, that's weird. Let me check something. What'd you do? Oh, that's not enough cards. Alright. I don't know if anybody's... What? I probably have to rinse out a coffee cup. We only have two. Damn it. Hang on. Alright. Alright, basically anybody who hasn't heard of Gloom or played it, they played Gloom on Will Wheaton's tabletop as well. Oh, and I didn't realize somebody was streaming in Maine. Oh well. But anybody who hasn't seen it in Will Wheaton's tabletop, basically each player, it plays up to 5 or 6 I think, I don't remember. Each player gets a family of people. And your goal is to make them as miserable as possible. I don't know why I keep looking down at the thing. Your goal is to make them as miserable as possible, and then kill them off. So you're supposed to, like, certain cards, like say this one right here, was consumed by chaos. See, they're clear cards. Let me actually pull up this so I can. There, they're actually clear cards, like that. So you're gonna have a family member. So say we have. No, that's a goal. Hang on, let me get one of the family members. Okay, so you have Brazzy the Wise. So I would play on him. search for Sepulchre, and I would make up some stupid story about how he searched for Sepulchre, and you put it on top of him. So now he's got these negative points modifiers on him. And I can play, you keep playing more and more on him to get their points, whatever is on top is what they actually have. So, you know, this is 15 and 15. So I could play this, and it actually turns that bottom one into a 20. So now it's 15 and 20. But then Brandon, if he wanted to be a dick, he can make that he caught the side of a cadet, which gives it plus 30 points and takes away that penalty. So now I'm at a plus 15 points on him, which you don't want. You want the lowest score. You want them to be as miserable as possible. And that's the point of the game. You're just basically putting cards on top of each other, and you end up getting these big-ass stacks of cards. And you can only kill a character if their self-worth is in the negatives. And there's other rules about when you can play certain cards and whatnot. Oh god, did I just do what I think I just did? Oh shit. I put him in here somewhere. Fuck.
I'm playing to win on this.
Yeah, basically this game, you don't really play to win. You play to just to tell funny stories. Like, Rain doesn't like it because she's terrible at making up stories, which she does fine, but she doesn't like to do it because she, like me and Brandon, we roleplay and I DM a lot, and so she feels inadequate, I guess. I don't know. And I mean, our stories aren't even that great. I'm going to go with the Red family, the
Arkhamites.
Yeah, the Arkhamites again. And your family has literally no impact on the game whatsoever. It's their name and their color, that's it. I get them because they're red, and better red than dead.
I'm gonna go with the Whateleys again.
Those are the fish people?
No.
I almost want to just leave these goals out, because we never really seem to use them anyways. Alright, I'm going to turn the music down. We're streaming again, by the way, so don't come out here naked. Unless you want to make my stream interesting. Alright.
I got Simple Farm Folk.
Simple fish folk. Oh no, you're not doing you're doing the farm folk.
I thought about doing the fishes. It's hard to tell stories with the fishes though, especially when I can't pronounce the fucking lady's name.
We could have had boobs. My channel isn't set for mature audiences. I probably should do that.
I could probably get PG-13.
Especially nowadays. PG-13 gets rid of a lot of shit. Alright. Yes.
Random
My
number
generator cube. Oh, fuck. Alright, I'm going first. So let's see what I got. And your death cards, so you have cards that kill outright. You can only play them, you get 2 actions a turn. You can play 2 cards. Death cards can only be played as your first action. So basically it prevents you from going, this really bad thing happens, and then I kill them. Which you can still do that due to various effects of the cards. It's a fairly convoluted game at first. Like, whenever you play, like, for example, I'm going to do this. Edward Derby one day was out visiting the countryside. Until you tell these stupid little stories. He was out exploring the countryside, and he wandered off somewhere, and unfortunately he was last seen on Leng. Very tragic. And then at the bottom it says, the player to your left may play an event as a free play. So now he gets to play an event as a free play, and then I get my second action. Nothing. Alright. And, yeah. Well, I'll just go ahead and...
Yeah, finish your second one.
Aseneth, unfortunately finding out that her dear uncle, Edward Derby, was seen in Leng, and it being just a terrible place, as we all know, started having these terrible nightmares, and she seemed to be stalked by shadows. And it says, player to my left may draw and discard 1 card from my hand. So basically, he gets to pick a card from my hand and discard it. And see, he knows that this is probably a death card, but the opposite side, some of them could be good cards, some of them could be bad cards. They could be a lot of things. That's why the backs of them of these ones are all the same. So
discard 2.
One. Yeah, that's my good one. So it's not. I mean, it's a fun game to play.
You draw back up.
Yeah, and then you draw back up to 5.
All right.
It's a fun game to play. A lot of fun.
Well, despite his disappearance in...
You're an asshole. He was last seen on Lang.
Despite his disappearance in Lang, many people were worried about him. His whole family. They put out flyers. They sent out search parties. They called their friends. They called in everybody they could. And they finally caught word of his location, and they found out that they caught sight of him in Cada.
Oh, it was good. Good that he was in Cada. See, and he put a +30 on the card. Last seen on Lang, yeah. Last seen on Lang gave him two -15s, and see, let me see. So he's got 2 -15s and a +30. So he's now worth 0 points to me. So I have no reason to kill him off again. So, like I said, it's just a fun game. Oh, you know what? I meant to. How is the mic, by the way? Because I've heard that my webcam mic sounds like shit. I need to. I just put it this way. So I meant to try this webcam to see how that one sounds.
Yeah.
But all right, you get another play.
Well, Junior, being the bouncing baby, horrifying nightmare that he is, being raised by such indelicate parents, very rough hands. They're a farming family. They don't really,
Of course.
they don't really know a delicate touch to a baby. So when they tried to tickle him, it was truly terrifying. And so Junior was just tormented by tickling.
Of course. Which he should be.
I mean, with those fingers.
Oh wait, I forgot to do this. I got to draw, reveal, and keep 2 cards. And if either of them are a sheep or a star icon, I may claim a story regardless of its requirements. Doesn't matter. Yeah, that's right. We're not playing with stories right now.
There you go, back up to 2.
Yes. I mean, what else would you have 5?
Okay, I guess whatever.
Alright, well, Edward Derby, while he was caught sight of Cada, while he caught sight of him in Lang, little known fact that he actually had a merging of minds while he was there. It was very interesting. So I canceled his his +30 with a -15. And then let's see. And then my whole family got together one day and had a festival, which means I could draw 3 cards and play all 3 of them if able. Does it have to be on my family? Oh, what?
Play on your family?
This is some bullshit. Well, during Edward Derby's merging of the minds, destroyed him, like mentally just ruined every part of his being, and he wound up being consumed by chaos. It was just terrible. Your people only score you points
if they're dead.
Doesn't matter how negative they are. Once the game ends, they're not dead. They're not worth shit. Well, Asneth, being stalked by those shadows, having a terrible time. She heard that Vermont was sunny this time of year.
Oh,
and
terrible.
So, unfortunately, she visited Vermont.
Terrible decision.
Terrible decision. She regretted it right out of the gates. However, Herbert West, after hearing about his dear brother being consumed by chaos, he tried to find some information, and he wound up ganging up with some ghouls. Unfortunately. Unfortunately and fortunately. I had to fucking play it on myself.
Okay. Well, despite his no affiliations with the ghouls, and despite
God damn it.
despite being ganged up with the ghouls, and just such a strange, bizarre moment that he was completely unfazed by all of this. He wandered through life without caring, without any bewilderment, with just no amazement. And so he really lived life without wonder.
Ah, beautiful. Damn it. Holy shit, he's worth fucking 20 points now.
Let me see. And whilst Lavinia Whately was out collecting water from her well, as she pulled the bucket up, she noticed it was a little heavier than usual, so not more than what should be with water. And she looked down into the bucket. She noticed all these tiny little toads in there, and they just came upon her, beset upon her from all sides, and she was just mercilessly tortured by toads.
It's a bad way to go, I've heard. Very bad way to go.
Look at my hand and keep one.
You keep one?
Look at my hand.
No.
It's a good day.
I'll take that. It's actually really good death card.
Wow. Why is this game giving me just the dickiest things ever?
Oh. Maybe I didn't want that one. Damn it. I shouldn't have chose that one. I should have chose that other one.
Yeah.
This one right here. I think is the one I should have chose.
Yeah.
Oh well. I read the text out of the bottom and went, oh.
Oh yeah, not fine.
Damn it.
Hadn't gone about playing that one yet. Let's remove Holy Man.
Yeah, hang on.
That's all this game is. Stupid story.
On the table. So, well, Herbert West, one day sitting in his library, realizing that he did indeed live without wonder, he chose, what happens if I do wonder? You know what? I wonder what is on those cursed cliffs. So he proceeded to climb them. I could play a modifier as a free action with a tentacle, which is none. Huh? And while he was climbing the cursed cliffs, let's see. While climbing those cursed cliffs, he didn't understand. He got halfway up, didn't understand what exactly made them so cursed, until he hit about the halfway point and he noticed movement, and it dawned on him that he really should have been worrying about those whippoorwills.
Terrible. I've heard devastating things about
they're horrible. Oh shit. I can't play on timely deaths.
Yeah.
That one sucks.
I'm debating on whether I want to just go ahead and let you keep that one.
He's worth a shitload of points right now, though.
He is. It's true. My turn?
Yep.
Well, Lavinia Whately, while she's being tortured by the toad things, they dragged her deeper into the well into their toad lair. And one night while she was during one of their standard torturing sessions, they left her unguarded, and she managed to slip out of one of her bindings. And she tried to flee, but not knowing the architecture of the toad things, terrible lair.
Yeah, indeed.
She ended up going farther into the tunnels, and she just delved too deep.
Oh, I hate that.
Yeah, terrible stuff. Okay. You see, Old Man Whately, just mortified over the fact that his wife, Lavinia, had been pulled into the well by the toad things. He was desperate to get anything back, to get any sign of her, to get her back. And he was so mortified and just so desperate that he went to the gas. And he knew that they could find her and that he could get her back from her, but they were going to play a dangerous game. And so he gambled with the gas.
No, never a good idea. Never a good idea. Draw, reveal, and discard 2 cards.
Either has the that symbol. You may draw a card from my hand.
Okay.
That's right. I was afraid you were going to choose the other one.
Really? Damn it. No what? I guess that's it. Well, one day, Walter Gilman, in his library, because we all know, they actually, in their mansion, they all live in one big mansion, and each room has a library attached to it, because they're that rich in the Arkham University. And while Walter Gilman was in his library, he was looking through some dubious old books. And you get to look at your hand and play 1 card from it. Assuming that means it could... Well, no, I can't play Untimely Death. Never mind. Here, put this one so you can't use it against me. Break. Well, in reading through his books, he noticed that Wilbur Wheatley, fuck Wilbur Wheatley, that Lavinia Wheatley. Oh, you guys actually share the same name.
Yeah, mine's actually a family.
Yeah, mine's just a bunch of random people.
They're all students at Arkham.
Yeah, pretty much. But yeah, Lavinia Wheatley. He noticed that she had recently gotten some really good grades at the Arkham University, so he sent her a line on the telly, and let her know that
Toad Caves.
Yes, deep in the Toad Caves, that her recent events left a message for her that she was actually going to be able to cut down on her classwork if she would like.
Oh, that's not bad.
It's pretty good.
It was a light relief from the
torturous, the nightmares that she had to undergo. However, while she was down in her caves, of course she wasn't able to get that message. Yeah, it's waiting for her in an answering machine. But during there, being lost, delving way, way too deep in those caves, she met a man. She caroused with him. Unfortunately, however, or fortunately, he was a cultist and was able to help her out quite a bit. There. I say draw 1 card from the hand of the player here. Okay, so it wouldn't be... Yeah. Because this is the one I drew at the end of my turn.
Just have much events in your hand.
Yep, 2 events and 2 death cards. So that would mean I get to draw 1.
Okay. You can do that.
No, let me...
Well,
You could,
in Lavinia's stressful time in the tunnels,
slightly
when she
less
received
stressful.
that telephone call that, oh man, I don't have to worry about the homework anymore. This is just too good to be true. That was killing me. That was destroying my home life. All I was doing was working on the farm and working on my classwork, and working on the farm and working on my classwork. It was just a blessing in disguise. And then she realized, this is a little too good to be true. How did I even receive a phone call in the Toad Cave?
Exactly.
This doesn't make any sense. And she was like, oh, the guile of my dreams. And I just, that dreamer's guile. She had awoken realizing
That was just a dream.
it was all just a dream. She had never even gone to Arkham University.
Oh, that would make sense. It would make sense. How do I turn off the, I figured out how to turn off fucking chat filter.
Unfortunately, when she awoke, she continued to climb deeper into the tunnels, just fleeing from the toads, terrified that they were going to torture her again. And so, as she continued down the tunnels, she noticed that the tunnels were changing colors. She was going deeper into the earth, and so the rock formations were having more curious colors. And so she actually found a curious color. But for anyone that knows anything about Lovecraft, finding curious colors never works out for anyone.
I'm trying to figure out how to words, band chatters. Like, there's a chat filter that like censors out cuss words and shit, and I can't figure out how to get rid of it. I don't know. Anyways. Well, Herbert West, while climbing those the cursed cliffs and worrying about those whippoorwills, and he realized that, you know, there's an equation that he remembered back in high school at the Arkham University's lower branch, not in high school, but in the Arkham University back when he went. But he couldn't quite put his finger on it. He couldn't not remember what it was. There was an equation that would help him out of this situation, but unfortunately he was mystified by the math and just could not figure it out.
Well, he is a doctor. He's not mathematically
exactly. So it's even. Discard your hand. If it's odd, draw 3 cards. So 20. Oh, it's even. It's the end of my turn. I didn't think that one all the way through.
Terrible. Well, unfortunately for Miss Whaley, as she continued to delve deeper into these caves, and the walls the colors got more curious and curious, just these bright neon orange, and she was mystified by these bizarre colors. It baffled her on how these could exist so deep in the earth. Not knowing actually the heat stroke that was going with her. For she had burrowed so far into the earth, she'd gone to the mantle and had sadly burned alive.
Oh. Sad.
Terrible stuff. And in mourning the loss of his dear mother, Wilbur Whaley, classically known as just the miscreant of the group, he'd always been a terrible, terrible child. He'd ravaged all of her goods, looking for any kind of will or anything that he could plunder.
Yes.
And in doing so, he actually discovered her diary.
Oh. Oh, that's sad. It probably brought up a lot of deep emotions. Let me change something here.
Yeah, she's worth like 60.
Yeah. Nothing.
Okay.
Well, mystified. Well, after Herbert West, you know, climbing his cursed cliffs and not being able to remember that math, he wound up reaching a cave. Kind of camped further on in the back to try to use the spare time to try to think of that damn equation that would help him out of the situation. But he didn't realize it started gradually getting colder, and winter was coming. And
we all know winter is coming.
Winter's always coming. I'd like to know who Winter is and how she's having such a good time. But and with winter on its way, he didn't take into account the cold weather blowing into the cave, and unfortunately he wound up being trapped in the ice in the cave.
Yes.
Terrible. What was this again? Oh, I'm not going to be able to do that, damn it. No. Oh, really? Well, during the recent events, people are dying left and right, and eventually, with all this happening in such close proximity and such succession with each other, there was just mass hysteria.
Mm.
And unfortunately, poor Walter Gilman was lost in the mix. You have truth too.
I heard Rutherford Whaley just did not fare well at college.
There's just so much hysteria. It was...
And the riots.
He crushed his Walter Gilman's pelvis. It was painful.
There's so much death in my here.
Must be nice. All of mine are useless.
Let me see. Discovering dear Lavinia's diary, bringing up a lot of tortured emotions for him. He knew that he had to go find her. He had to discover.
Sanity, this isn't one of those types of games. You don't really know who's winning to the end, and you don't really play to win anyways. Really. Anyways, sorry.
He went to go discover the true fate of his dear mother, of his dear departed mother. And in doing so, the last he had heard from his father that she was going to go get some water by the well. And so he knew that the well led out at a river. It had collected a source from a river.
That's the same well that those toads... Oh.
Wilbur's a big man. He can handle himself.
Okay.
But she was going to go out to the source because he figured she had fallen in and washed out to sea. And in looking for her, he did go rafting by the reef.
Oh.
And it just did not end well for him.
Yeah, I'd say not. Probably tore up inside of his boat.
Just take 2 and discard them. That's the end of my turn.
Again, basically Sanity, where the goal of this game, you notice the cards are clear. You're stacking them on top of your characters, trying to give them miserable lives until they all die. And most of the game is just telling funny stories. Well, Wilbur Wheatley, after rafting through or rafting by the reefs, he actually fell into the water and washed up near the shore, and he noticed that he was unusually dry, being just dumped in the ocean or in the water and washing on the shore. And in his startle, he shook awake. He realized he was in his own bed, and he actually realized that he's just been having horrible hallucinations.
Mm.
It was very tragic, actually.
Terrible. I don't even remember what Anna Sith was doing. Where her life had taken her.
She was stalked by shadows and visited Vermont to try to get away from the shadows, because it's sunny this time of year. Professor Armitage, in his laboratory pretty much the whole time, didn't realize that 2 of his close colleagues had been killed. there's no, especially from Edward Derby. No, not Edward Derby, my bad. Herbert West, being frozen in his cave and all, had no idea that that's where he was. So he started investigating, and the first place he wound up investigating, unfortunately, was Innsmouth.
Mm.
And you get to play a modifier as a free play.
Well, with how terrible that Innsmouth is.
Basically, sanity.
Just an awful, god-awful, miserable place. Wilbur Whately, not Wilbur Whately, Professor Armitage, with all the misery and suffering around him, he had actually forgotten about his terrible athlete's foot, and had actually forgotten about the fungus.
No. It's a good thing, though, because, I mean, Innsmouth is a pretty good walk away, and that athlete's foot would destroy him.
You can draw or discard a card.
Draw a card. There we go.
We see Wilbur Whately awakening from his terrible hallucinations. He was just mentally ravaged, not in his right mind. He was gone. And so, but the one thing he remembered is that his mother was still trapped in that well.
Yeah.
And so he ran down the farm to the well and just, without heed, dove straight first into the well, seeking his mother. And so nobody ever knew that he was doing this. Nobody ever told him. And so he actually never returned from the dive.
It's so sad. Let's see. Well.
Come on. Also, these cards smell terrible.
Yes,
Anybody knows?
These cards kind of smell like melted plastic. So, because Professor Armitage forgot about the fungus in his foot one night while in Innsmouth, it was unusually quiet, especially for Innsmouth. He looked all over the place. Oh, no. Disregard. Hang on. Okay. While in Innsmouth, and the fungus all over his foot, you know, Innsmouth being Innsmouth, of course, he wound up being pursued by some of the strange inhabitants of the city, making him feel very uneasy, remembering, of course, his fungus. Causing him now to have to seek shelter. He needed to get out of there, and made him, unfortunately, flee frantically. And I get to discard the one underneath it. While he fled, in the after fleeing the horrifying events of the city, he finally got to a very quiet area in an alley. And he started forgetting about his foot fungus again, of course, and allowed him to brainstorm and realized that, let's see, he started to brainstorm on the events and why he's here, why he chose Innsmouth of all places. And just then, when he realized that, still, not, so his foot still feels fine. You know, it's not on fire. But unfortunately, Googs came out of all of the crevasses of the street and just gutted him, unfortunately. And it was horrible, horrible, horrible event. Very messy, too.
Oh my. I can only imagine.
Yeah. Your job, again, is to
murder your whole family.
Murder your whole family. So.
We see. Old Man Whaley, still just caught in this tense game with the gas. They weren't bargaining with actual money. What they were bargaining with was body parts.
Oh.
And Old Man Whately, being the card shark that he was, won almost entirely the collection of limbs that these gas had collected. And forgetting about his whole family, he'd forgotten to ask about where his wife had gone, and so he had taken so much pride in all of these extremities that he had won. He had plastered them on a wall, much like a trophy case, and he'd taken such pride he'd put them into an exhibition.
Of course.
And so he had started to inventory extremities.
Oh, that's kind of twisted. That's pretty.
You have to draw and discard one from here. Alex, have it. You see,
Water ball's right here.
well, Anseth was in Vermont being chased by shadows.
Horrible.
She had fled from the shadows, as anyone rightfully should. But she left her purse on the bus that she was in. And so she was out of money and just had no way to entertain herself or pay for anything. And so she had to stop at a local bookstore. And in doing so, she knew she couldn't pay for anything, so she had to bargain for her entertainment. And so she ended up bargaining for books. To draw or discard 2 cards.
I will draw 2 cards. Well, while bargaining for books, the local book shop owner, of course, he can't not get profit. You know, he can't give away these books for free. But what he did tell her was, there's an old lady that lives a couple blocks down the road, lives near a little cottage near the river, and she has an abundance of books. Really old lady, probably can't even read them anymore. So you want to go check her out, and if she's not home, she'll never know if she just goes in and takes a couple books. So Asnith, you know, really wanting those books, decided to head down to that cottage, and she wound up wailing in the witch house to find said books.
Terrible.
Yeah, it's probably a terrible idea. Well,
Old Man Whately. He was so proud of his hands.
Well, after old Wheatley, with his inventoried extremities collection, very proud of them, one night there's a thunderstorm rolling in, and we all know how thunderstorms are. They make you reflect on things. And he realized that what he's done is a horrible thing. All these people that because of course he wants them fresh. Yeah. Nice.
My showbox app.
Yeah.
Season 5, up to 4 episodes.
Nice. But when he did that, he very sadly shambled downstairs and sat down with a couple of his cats because he knew they'd make him feel better. And more came in. Some that he didn't even know existed, like outside, came in somehow through the door. So he wound up just cuddling with a bunch of cats to make himself feel better of the horrors and atrocities that he's done in his life. What's it do?
Search for an event.
Tomorrow's probably, I work tomorrow from like 11 till Angela gets out of school.
Oh, you do work tomorrow?
Yeah.
Okay.
Are you off?
No.
I work from 11 till...
Well, then how are you going to go to the gym?
I work from 11
Okay.
to 10. I'm going to take Angela to school, come back home, change, go to the
You work
gym.
from 11 to 10?
11
10.
to like 3 or whenever Angela gets out of school.
Okay.
Okay. Well, that's just going to run you down to the gym and everything.
You can!
I don't know if I'll be awake for everything.
Okay. Let me see. With all these kittens just in this massive fur ball, it's just cuddling and just love and happiness all around. Nobody can be sad while cuddling a pile of kittens. But again, as it runs in his family, he's just plagued by hallucinations.
Yeah, indeed.
And with his hallucinations, he realized that it's just too good. Nothing this good could ever happen to me. I am a miserable sod. I've murdered so many people. How could these kittens even stand the smell of my home with all these hands about?
Of course.
And so again, as much as his wife and much as his son Wilbur, he realized that he was just caught up in another dream. And so when he awoke, he realized that the guile of his dreams to just ruin his day like that.
Oh.
And so he woke up realizing that there were never any kittens.
He didn't even own cats.
Exactly.
He's a dog person.
Exactly. And you see, Junior, with his wholly sleeping and just completely just ignorant, never there family, he had wandered off into the woods. Just this tiny, helpless tentacle baby wandering around in the woods, just seeing just these horrible, nightmarish things in the woods. Actually, let's see. I should go into that. Scratch that. I'm gonna pass, actually, because that would have fucked me.
Okay.
Don't do it. I'll ruin you.
Well, I actually can't even think of a story for this one.
But
Well, Wilbur Wheatley, you know, the tragic death that she had, diving way too deep into that well, looking for his mom. Everybody thought he was dead, but everybody knows that even death may die.
pray.
With that said, unfortunately, Asnith Wyatt, being the cute little girl that she is, you know, unfortunately stumbling into the witch house, she actually was the one that was buried alive. She wound up being buried alive into the witching house under a pile of books. But a mysterious door opened up in the Wheatley residence. What was on the other side of that door?
You gotta fucking pray.
What was it? Lavanya walks through the door alive and well when Wilbur Wheatley is just elated to see his beloved mother.
I feel like things are going pretty alright for the Whateleys.
So I won with lots of points.
I have 0.
Brandon, he has 0 because I stole all of his. I got rid of and stole all of his death cards. That's why I stole those cards. And you're like, don't do it, I'll ruin you. I was like, oh, shut your mouth. You don't do a damn thing.
You're fucking
That's all this game is. Just telling stories and trying to just give yourself miserable lives. Alright, what now?
What time is it?
1 o'clock. Yeah, I should probably start winding down for bed.
Yes.
Don't forget your battle mages.
Yes. I forgot about that.
Next time,
You want to play Dead of Winter?
I might have to play Dead of Winter. Because I got the buddy of mine got me the promo card for Dead of Winter with Felicia Day as a character. I'm kind of hyped to see that one. So. No, it's not cheating. I actually had 2 cards. One told me that I got to remove one of a death card from somebody. And another one that said I got to put a death card from one character to a living character with negative self-value. So I took it out of his and put it on mine. So, anyways, that was Cthulhu Gloom. Fun game. Not necessarily a good game, but it's a hell of a lot of fun to play.
It's really only fun when you have someone who will storytell, though.
Yeah, like, the game is horrible if you're playing with somebody who's just like... That's why even shitty storytelling is fine. It doesn't have to be good. As long as you don't play with somebody going, well, this like this, and then this, and it's just like these cards. It's not fun. If you actually make a story to go with it, the game is a lot of fun to play. Anyways.
Sanity God, you'd probably be good at Munchkin. In the actual rulebook itself, it encourages cheating.
But anyways, that's it for
Lying and
tonight.
cheating.
It's 1 o'clock in the morning, and I gotta wake up to 7, and I plan on going to the gym. So, I guess for the people who watch this later, I have a YouTube channel by the same name, The Quarantine. Check it out. Like, comment, subscribe to this and the YouTube channel. I'll see you guys next time in The Quarantine.